Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Andrew, 34 years old, and I work with my hands. I'm a plumber in Fort Collins, Colorado, a town tucked between jagged mountain ranges and long, quiet roads. While my siblings fly business class and wear tailored clothes, I crawl through basements fixing busted pipes. And honestly, I used to feel ashamed of that. I grew up in a family obsessed with appearances. My parents, Harold and Lorraine, were both professors, the kind of people who spoke in footnotes and lived in a Boston mansion so pristine it felt like a museum. I was their third child, the one who didn't quite fit in. My eldest brother, Nathan, is a chef-turned-celebrity restaurateur. His face is on the covers of magazines, and his ego fills any room he walks into. My sister, Vivian, owns a luxury skincare brand and rubs elbows with influencers and billionaires in Manhattan. My youngest brother, Julian, is a hedge fund guy in Chicago. Cold. Precise. Drenched in wealth and Wall Street confidence. And then there's me. The fix-it brother. Blue collar. Grease-stained. Easy to forget. At family dinners, I'm the ghost at the table. They talk in acronyms and champagne bubbles, and when I chime in with something real, like saving a flooded daycare from bursting pipes, someone always glances at their watch. It hurt, but I swallowed it. That's why I came up with the Europe trip. I wanted to do something big. Something they couldn't ignore. I'd had a good year, landed several municipal contracts and invested well. Quiet money, nothing flashy. But it gave me just enough to dream. So, I planned it. A full European getaway for our family, first-class flights, 5-star hotels, private guides, Michelin star restaurants. Paris, Rome, Barcelona. I covered everything. Every single dollar. All I asked was for everyone to come with open hearts. To laugh together. To reconnect. I told my girlfriend Lena, a high school English teacher, I just want them to see me. Really see me. She hesitated. Andrew, I support you. But if they hurt you again, promise me you won't let it slide. I promised. I wish I'd meant it. Because what happened next? I'll never forget it. They showed up, all right. My whole family. All dressed like they were on the cover of Travel Plus Leisure. But from the moment we touched down in Paris, I felt it, the same old coldness. Nathan ignored me at the welcome dinner to flirt with a sommelier. Vivian made a face when Lena complimented her dress, like she'd just been touched by a commoner. Julian actually asked if I was moonlighting as the hotel maintenance guy. At first, I brushed it off. Laughed. Pretended it didn't hurt. But it only got worse. They skipped tours I planned. Dined at places I hadn't booked. Held side chats and took group selfies without me. I paid for everything, and they treated me like the bus driver. I started to feel it deep in my bones, I didn't belong here. Not with them. But it wasn't until Rome that the betrayal really hit me. We had a villa just outside the city, an old stone beauty with a vineyard. I had dreamed of long dinners, laughter echoing through the gardens. What I got instead? Silence. Distance. Vivian actually told her assistant to reroute her itinerary to avoid Andrew's agenda. Julian disappeared for 3 days to hang with some rich college friend. And Nathan? He mocked the pasta I cooked for the group. Called it rustic, which in our family means beneath them. And my parents? They just watched. Smiled weakly. Said nothing. That night, I stood in the courtyard under the Roman moon, listening to my siblings toast each other inside, and I thought, I brought them across the world, and they left me behind. Lena found me crying in the dark. Andrew, she whispered, you don't owe them anything. She was right. But what came next? That was all me. Because the next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to cancel the trip. All of it. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ornate ceiling of the villa, listening to the silence between Lena's breaths. I kept hearing their laughter from earlier, Vivian's fake cackles, Nathan's booming voice, Julian's condescending chuckles. My family was asleep in comfort. On my dime. Under a roof I paid for. And I had never felt more alone. By dawn, I was sitting in the small marble-tiled lounge of the villa with my laptop open. I hovered my cursor over the itinerary file, Rome, Florence, Barcelona. Hundreds of hours of planning, coordination, and savings. And yet, all I could think was, none of this made them see me. Lena woke up a little after 7 a.m., rubbing sleep from her eyes. When she saw me, hunched over the laptop, she walked to me quietly and placed a hand on my back. Still thinking about them? No, I said. I'm thinking about me for once. She sat beside me, watching as I opened the booking dashboard. My hand trembled as I scrolled past each reservation, limousine services, villa extensions, wine tastings, yacht rentals in Spain. Are you really going to do it? She asked. I am. There was a long pause. Then she said the words that gave me strength, then do it, Andrew. You've spent your whole life trying to impress them. It's time they remember who paid the bills. One by one, I began canceling everything. The cancellation fees were brutal. I'd lose thousands. But every confirmation email that came through felt like a chain snapping off my soul. I left just one thing untouched, Lena and I's small apartment reservation in Florence. Once the last email dinged in, I shut the laptop, exhaled, and smiled. Let's go see Florence, I said. We left without saying a word to my family. Not a text. Not a note. By the time they woke up, their schedules would be blank, their reservations null. The man they treated like a servant had just quit. I didn't hear from them until that night. First came the calls, 10 missed calls from Julian, 4 from Vivian, 2 from my mom. Then the messages. Nathan, dude, the driver never showed. What's going on? Vivian, our hotel in Florence said the rooms were cancelled. Is this a mistake? Mom, Andrew, is everything okay? Everyone's confused. I didn't answer. Lena and I were already sipping espresso in a tiny cafe off the Arno River, the sun setting behind us like something out of a postcard. I had never felt more weightless. But then the guilt crept in. Was I really that petty? Had I just punished my entire family? Maybe I should have told them, I said, stirring my espresso. Lena placed her hand on mine. You didn't punish them. You stopped rewarding their behavior. Still, part of me couldn't silence the voice in my head, the one that still longed for approval, still feared their disappointment. Then my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from my father. I hesitated, then pressed play. Andrew, son, what is this? Your siblings are panicking. They say everything's cancelled. I don't understand. Call me. Even then, he didn't ask if I was okay. He just wanted answers. Because that's what I was to them, dependable. Quiet. Disposable. I turned the phone off. The next 2 days were the most peaceful of my adult life. Florence welcomed us like a warm embrace. Lena and I roamed cobbled streets, discovered hidden art galleries, got lost in antique bookstores. We laughed over bad Italian and burnt croissants. We weren't sightseeing, we were living. And for once, I didn't feel like I was running from anything. I felt like I was running toward myself. But the storm was gathering behind us. Back in Rome, the family was unraveling. They had to pay out of pocket for new lodging, and none of them had prepared for that. Julian's credit card got declined. Vivian tried to book a last-minute luxury suite only to find out her business card had a limit. Nathan, ever the charmer, tried to negotiate with the concierge, who kicked him out for being rude. None of them knew how to travel without a cushion. Without control. Without me. That was the part that hurt the most. They weren't angry that I had cancelled everything. They were scared. Because they needed me. And they hated that. 2 days later, my mother finally reached me. She called from an unfamiliar number. I answered, assuming it was a work call. Andrew? Her voice was soft. Shaky. It's Mom. I stood frozen in the middle of a piazza, pigeons fluttering around me, the smell of fresh bread in the air. Are you all right? She asked. I'm fine, Mom. There was silence. Where are you? Florence. With Lena. I see. Well, we're back in Rome. Things have been difficult. I said nothing. We've had to make other arrangements. Everyone's adjusting. But Andrew, why didn't you say anything? Why not talk to us? I laughed bitterly. Mom, I've been talking my whole life. You all just never listened. I didn't know you felt this way, she whispered. No, I corrected her. You didn't want to know. She didn't argue. I'm sorry, she said after a pause. I truly am. I nodded to myself. I know. And then I hung up. That night, as Lena and I stood watching the sunset from the Ponte Vecchio, I finally said the thing that had been growing in me since Paris. They don't get to define me anymore. Lena leaned on my shoulder. They never did. You just thought they did. And that's when it truly hit me. All this time, I hadn't been trying to change their minds. I'd been trying to change mine. The next morning in Florence, Lena and I took a lazy walk down Via de Tornabuoni, the street lined with high-end fashion boutiques and posh cafes. But instead of feeling out of place, I felt grounded. For the first time in my life, I was in a luxury district and didn't feel like I had to pretend to belong. I wasn't dressed to impress, I was dressed for comfort. And I didn't care who looked twice. But while we sat down to enjoy our cappuccinos, something unexpected happened. I received an email from an old client named Harold DeWitt. A real estate developer I'd done some emergency work for a year ago. He had offered me a position back then, something about consulting for his growing set of properties, but I had declined. I wasn't ready. I was still trying to play family clown, not serious businessman. But now. His email subject read, "Still interested? We should talk." Lena noticed my expression shift as I read it. "What is it?" she asked. I turned the phone around and showed her. She leaned in, eyebrows raised. "That's the guy you fixed the water main for in Boulder, right? He said you saved him millions." I nodded. "He wants to offer me a formal partnership," I said slowly, rereading the message. "He's expanding into Colorado Springs and needs someone to manage plumbing contracts for all his developments." Lena grinned. "Looks like someone sees your worth." That was the moment something cracked open in me. While my siblings were busy posturing and pretending, my name, Andrew, was being passed around in circles they had no idea existed. I wasn't just a plumber. I was becoming the foundation they never had the patience to build. I scrolled through more of my inbox and found another message, this time from the city council. One of my larger municipal contracts was up for renewal, and they wanted me to bid again. They even mentioned in the body of the email that they preferred I lead a new infrastructure upgrade across 3 neighborhoods. It hit me like a wave, my life is moving forward. Theirs isn't. But what really broke me was what I found next. A shared Google Drive link. From my sister Vivian. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a folder titled Trip Backup Plan. There were receipts. Plans. Reservations. But not mine. These were hers. Dated 2 weeks before we even landed in Paris. I clicked through the documents, my stomach turning. Vivian had planned an alternate trip. Private hotels. Luxury events. Dinners. All for her, Nathan, and Julian. There was even a chat thread saved as a PDF. I opened it, heart thudding. Vivian, I don't trust Andrew's taste. I'm bringing my own itinerary. Nathan, agreed. We'll let him pay, then dip when we're bored. Julian, let the peasant run the tours. We'll catch up later, maybe. My mouth went dry. Lena, I whispered, turning the phone toward her. She read the thread in stunned silence. Then she whispered, they planned to ditch you the whole time. I nodded slowly. They never intended to spend this trip with me. I was their wallet. I sat back, numb. Not only had they treated me like an afterthought, they strategized it. Every laugh. Every fake thank you. Every empty toast. All of it was a performance. That's when the sadness I'd been dragging like a heavy coat, turned into rage. Lena didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally, you know what you have to do now, right? I nodded. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. That night, I crafted a single message. One email. Subject, I know everything. Body. Vivian. I read the group chat. I saw your itinerary. I saw what you all said. You never intended to share this trip with me. You used me. I paid for your vanity vacation and you humiliated me at every turn. Now that I've cancelled everything, you're left with the trip you actually planned, so enjoy it. P.S. I sent a copy of the chat to Mom and Dad. You'll want to explain it to them before I do. And I did. I forwarded the screenshots to my parents. No caption. No commentary. Just the raw truth. By morning, my phone had exploded. But I wasn't answering. Not yet. Let them stew. Let them finally taste the disrespect they'd been spoon-feeding me for decades. After sending that email, I turned off my phone. Not for a few minutes. Not for a few hours. For 2 full days. Lena and I were in Barcelona by then, in a small beachside apartment with chipped tiles and ocean air slipping through open windows. We didn't have a fancy itinerary anymore, just each other, long walks along the shore, and silence broken only by the sound of waves and laughter. But beneath that peace, I was sharpening something. Not anger. Not pettiness. Focus. I'd spent my whole life trying to impress a family that never once paused to ask who I was. And now I saw them clearly, people who only saw worth in titles and optics, who only praised what looked good on paper. They never saw me. But now, the whole world would. Not through revenge for revenge's sake, but through a kind of revelation they couldn't ignore. I began by calling Harold DeWitt. We spoke for an hour. He said he'd been waiting for me to wake up and realize your name deserves to be on blueprints, not invoices. He wanted me to lead plumbing operations across 3 of his new developments. Not just as a contractor, but as a listed partner. Equity. Percentage of profit. My name on city permits. He sent the documents by that evening. Lena read them over while I sat at the kitchen table, the salty air making the pages flutter. You're not just building houses now, she said. You're building legacy. But that wasn't the real revenge. That was just my path. The real blow. That came next. Before we left Barcelona, I did something petty. But in a poetic way. I uploaded the entire group chat between my siblings, everything from Vivian's, let him plan the donkey tour, to Julian's, I'd rather sit in a sewer than eat at one of Andrew's places, onto a Google Doc. Then I shared it. To every extended family member in our group chat. Cousins. Aunts. Uncles. Even my parents' old university colleagues who still used AOL emails. I didn't write an intro. I just titled the file. What my siblings really think about me, and the trip I paid for. The fallout started instantly. Lena and I were at a street festival in Elborn, watching dancers swirl in red and gold, when my phone, still turned off, buzzed back to life. Calls. Messages. Dozens of them. From cousins I barely talked to. From my Aunt Elaine, who'd always favored Nathan. From my mother. From Julian. From Vivian, who sent 10 messages in a row. One stood out. Nathan, what the hell, Andrew? This is a family matter. I replied with 3 words. You made it public. Back in Denver, I made one more move. I sat down at my modest home office, updated my LinkedIn for the first time in years, and posted a story. It was simple. A photo of Lena and me smiling in front of the Barcelona sunset. Caption. Spent years thinking success was about changing myself to fit others. Turns out, it's about building a life that fits me. From pipe wrenches to property equity, I'm proud of every step. Hashtag small business owner, hashtag respect is earned, hashtag grateful heart. By the next morning, I had over 500 new connections, developers, municipal reps, and business owners I never knew watched me from the sidelines. One comment stood out. From someone I hadn't seen in years, a former high school teacher. Mr. Klein, I always knew you were meant for more than the labels they put on you. That one made me tear up. Because for the first time, I didn't just feel seen. I felt respected. And my family? They were imploding. Vivian called and left a voicemail. Her voice cracked. Andrew, you really went nuclear. Everyone's asking questions. My brand took a hit because of that screenshot you shared. Clients cancelled. I didn't mean it like that, okay? Then silence. Can we just talk? Please. No. You don't get to throw a match and ask for water after the fire starts. Julian sent me a text. Whatever you're doing, it's going to backfire. Don't be emotional. He still didn't get it. He still thought I was the quiet brother who would shrink back into the shadows. That Andrew was gone. Later that week, I received a message I didn't expect. From my father. Short. Blunt. Your mother is devastated. Call her. If you care. I stared at the screen for a long time. And I did call her. But not because he told me to. Because despite everything, I still loved her. She was silent when I needed protection, but I knew deep down she wasn't cruel. Just, afraid to choose sides. When she picked up, she didn't say hello. She just whispered, Andrew. I read it all. Then silence. Then sobbing. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. I waited. I was wrong, she said. About you. About them. I'm so sorry. And for the first time in years, I felt something shift in me. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just release. It's strange how silence can sometimes be louder than rage. After the email bombshell, the group chat exposure, and the social media posts, I didn't scream or argue. I didn't send any long, vindictive monologues. I simply disappeared from their lives. And in doing so, I became the one thing they had always denied me, power. Back in Denver, Lena and I settled into our lives like old furniture finally placed in the right corner of a room. I signed the deal with Harold DeWitt. Not just a contract, an equity partnership in a long-term real estate build-out across 3 cities. The same week I finalized the agreement, I also bought our first company van, plastered with the new name. Macmillan Infrastructure and Plumbing Solutions. Built with integrity. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't sparkle like a hedge fund or a skincare empire. But it was real. Solid. Built with hands that knew work, and a spine that now refused to bend. That week, I also did something symbolic. I removed my siblings from my phone's favorites list. A small, quiet deletion. But it felt like cutting the last cords tying me to the past. Then came the first knock on the door. Literally. It was Nathan. Standing on my porch in a black hoodie and designer sneakers that looked worn down, like the polish had finally worn off his life too. His face wasn't arrogant anymore, it was tired. Hollow. "Andrew," he said, shifting awkwardly. "Can I come in?" Lena appeared in the hallway, but I shook my head gently. "I'll talk to him out here." We sat on the porch. The sun was setting, casting long orange streaks across the pavement. He looked at his hands. "I messed up," he said. "I didn't say anything. I didn't know you felt all that. I mean, I knew we were, distant. But I didn't think we were that bad." I looked at him, the brother who once mocked me for having a toilet scrubbing career. "You never cared enough to know, Nathan," I said calmly. "You were too busy performing." He flinched. "You ruined me, Clients backed out after your post. Vivian blames me for everything. Julian won't even pick up my calls." "Good," I said flatly. "Now you know how it feels to be cut off." He shook his head. "I didn't come for sympathy. I came to say I get it. You were right. We were wrong." I studied his face. There was pain there. Not just inconvenience, pain. "And now?" I asked. "Now," he sighed. "I'm working at a consulting kitchen in Denver. It's not glamorous. Pays just enough to stay afloat." He paused, then looked at me. "Do you think we'll ever talk again? Like brothers?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I said, "Maybe. But not like before." And with that, I stood up and walked back inside. Over the next few weeks, my other siblings followed. Vivian called first, rambling voicemails about how she didn't mean what she said, how her comments were jokes, how she had always admired my groundedness. I didn't respond. A week later, she showed up at my parents' house in Boston, where she'd moved back in temporarily, and found out that my parents had cut their financial support after reading everything. She sent me a photo. It was a shot of her holding a box of clothes, standing in front of the family house. Caption: "Are you happy now?" I stared at it, unimpressed. She still thought I cared about revenge. She didn't understand, I wasn't trying to ruin her. I was just finally standing tall while she shrank under the weight of her own choices. Then came Julian. He didn't visit. He sent an email. Subject line: damage. The body was cold, as always. "You made your point. Our reputations are compromised. I've lost clients. Vivian is near broke. Nathan is unemployed. You've humiliated us. Congrats. If there's anything left of the brother we knew, you'll stop here." I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Lena. She replied with a shrug emoji and a single line. Still no apology. And that was the crux of it. They weren't sorry. They were exposed. There's a difference. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I hired my first full-time crew. I signed 2 new commercial contracts. I got invited to speak at a local small business panel. Me, Andrew McMillan, the quiet one. The fixer. The invisible brother. Now a respected entrepreneur. Lena and I bought a second-hand Jeep and started talking about road trips. Not for anyone else. Not for show. Just for us. And my parents? They didn't say much, but my mother sent a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter, in her neat, scholarly script. Andrew. I've read everything twice. Maybe 3 times. And I'm ashamed. Not of you, never of you. But of myself, for not standing up when you were being dismissed, mocked, belittled. I let it happen. I told myself you were strong enough to handle it, but that's no excuse. I hope you'll forgive me someday. I see you now. And I'm proud. Mom. I folded it slowly and placed it in my desk drawer. That letter wasn't for closure. It was for history. Proof that once, I was invisible. And then I chose to be seen. Just when I thought everything had settled, just when I was finally breathing without the weight of my family's judgment, I got a call I didn't expect. From my father. We hadn't spoken since I exposed the chat. His voice was gruff, as always, but different now, tight, like he was holding something back. Andrew, he said. I need to see you. In person. I stood in the middle of my office, stunned. The last time we spoke, he had told me to clean up the mess I made. Now he was asking to meet. Why? There was a pause. I owe you something. Not words. Something real. 2 days later, I met him at an old diner outside of Boulder, his favorite spot from when we were kids. I arrived first. Sat in the corner booth. Coffee in hand. My heart thudding like a second pulse. He walked in wearing a wool coat and the same professor-like expression he always had, only now it looked worn, cracked around the edges. He slid into the booth silently. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then finally, he placed a thin, creased envelope on the table and slid it toward me. What's this? I asked. Read it. I opened the envelope and pulled out a short legal letter. It took me a moment to process. When I looked up, my father's face was serious, but his eyes, for once, were soft. That's the transfer deed, he said quietly. To the cabin in Estes Park. My jaw clenched. You're giving me the family cabin? He nodded. Full ownership. It's yours. I shook my head slowly. That cabin was always supposed to go to Nathan. I know, he replied. That was the plan. But I changed it. Why? He looked at me for a long time. Then he said something that cracked the very foundation of everything I thought I knew. Because it was always yours. You just didn't know it. He explained everything. Apparently, when I was 16, I had fixed the plumbing at that same cabin after a pipe burst during a snowstorm. No one else could get there in time, and my father was stuck giving lectures out of state. I took a bus. In the middle of winter. I fixed it myself, using borrowed tools and duct tape. My father never forgot that. But at the time, he didn't praise me. He didn't even mention it. He thought that by staying silent, he was teaching me humility. What he didn't realize was he was teaching me invisibility. I've watched your siblings crumble, he said quietly. Their world is all performance. You've built something real. Something I can trust. I stared at the deed in my hands. Not because I wanted the cabin. But because this was the first time in my life I felt seen by him. I was wrong, he added, staring into his coffee. About what matters? About you. That's when it hit me, the twist in the story wasn't just how I had reclaimed my dignity. It was that they had all built their worth on sand. And I had built mine on bedrock. Vivian. Her brand's influencer deal collapsed after screenshots circulated. She was trying to pivot to freelance consulting. From a penthouse to a sublet in Alston. Julian. He took a lower-tier job in a regional finance firm. His LinkedIn updates became vague. No more TEDx talks. No more Forbes articles. Nathan. His restaurant chain filed for bankruptcy. He was cooking again, but this time, on the line at a gastropub in Lakewood. And me? I wasn't flashy. I wasn't famous. But I was free. And now, for the first time, I had something they never did, a foundation that couldn't be taken away. 3 days after the meeting with my father, I drove up to the cabin with Lena. The same one I had once saved in silence. This time, I walked through the door not as a guest, but as the owner. The keys were cold in my hand, but the warmth in my chest was fire. Lena looked around, beaming. "We should bring people here," she said. "Real people. People who respect you." I nodded. No more trying to fit into rooms where I'm barely tolerated. She smiled, slipping her arm through mine. "Now you build your own room." Back in Denver, I received one last package. From Julian. A thick manila envelope with no note, just a USB drive and a stack of old photographs. Curious, I plugged in the drive. Inside were family home videos. Ones I hadn't seen in decades. But something strange happened when I watched them. In video after video, I noticed it. Me. Always on the edge of the frame. Helping set the table. Fixing the fence. Watching over the younger cousins. Fetching chairs when there weren't enough. I had been there. Present. Essential. And yet always forgotten. But not anymore. Now, I was front and center. I watched the last home video in silence, the screen frozen on a frame of 12-year-old me raking leaves in the background while Nathan, Vivian, and Julian posed for the camera. My siblings, framed in golden hour sunlight. Me. Barely visible. Out of focus. Just a blur in the margins. That used to break me. Now it reminded me of what I had always been, steady, silent, and necessary. It's easy to overlook someone who never asks for attention. It's easier to forget them when you're too busy being seen. But people like me, we remember everything. A month passed. Then another. I didn't hear from any of my siblings. The silence didn't sting, it felt like oxygen. Lena and I were thriving. Our business had expanded, I hired 5 more employees, and we bought a second truck. I was mentoring younger tradesmen now, guys like I used to be, who thought their value came from mimicking the noise around them. It didn't. It came from mastering the quiet. Then one Friday night, I got a letter in the mail. From Vivian. Not an email. Not a text. An actual handwritten letter. "Andrew. I'm in therapy now. No, not for damage control, for real work. I've been revisiting that trip in my mind, and I keep coming back to how you looked at me in Rome. Not angry. Not even hurt. Just done. And that was the scariest thing. You always showed up. You paid. You planned. You kept trying. And we kept pushing you out of the frame. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to say. I see you now. And I'm sorry I didn't see you then. Vivian." Lena read it over my shoulder and gave a small smile. "Well," she said, "hell might have just frozen over." We laughed. But deep down, I felt something shift again. Not reconciliation. But recognition. That was enough. I never wrote back. Because some apologies aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to echo. One warm autumn afternoon, Lena and I stood at the cabin's porch with mugs of coffee in our hands. The aspens were beginning to turn gold, their leaves flickering like coins in the wind. I turned to her and said, "Do you think they ever really loved me?" She didn't rush her answer. "I think they loved the idea of you," she said. "The version that stayed small so they could feel big. But I don't think they loved you, the whole you, until they had to live without you." I nodded. "That's not love," I said. "That's need." And you don't owe anyone who only loved you when you were useful, she whispered. 3 weeks later, I got a message from Julian. No demands. No guilt. Just a question. Would you ever sit down with the three of us? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know. What I did know was this. I no longer needed their validation. I didn't need their seat at the table. Because I'd built my own. There was no final showdown. No screaming match. No tearful family reunion. Just a quiet man in Denver who finally knew his worth. And a woman by his side who had seen it all along. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.